So let's begin with Spark. Spark is a pretty decent basic skill. It really helps finishing off mobs. There's a good chance that it's going to spread its attack to other mobs. So we all know that basic skills are not your main source of damage, but you're gonna rely on them when you run out of mana to support and to help finish off mobs. And I was really satisfied with Spark, with the mechanics, how it works, and with the damage output. Then we have Frostbolt, and Frostbolt felt really weak. There was a hard time attacking multiple creatures. It has a chance to explode on hit on chilled enemies and frozen enemies, but I didn't really see that happening. On frozen enemies, it's 100%, but it really felt weak, and I had a hard time dealing with enemies with it. So I had to switch Firebolt, and Firebolt is great. Every time you hit an enemy with Firebolt, it burns, and every time you attack a burning enemy, then the Frostbolt pierces through them. So that really helps you to attack multiple enemies, not to mention the Firebolt does damage on hit, and then there's also a very big dot that it does. So it was really satisfying, it felt really satisfying to attack a large group of creatures with Firebolt alone. So definitely one of the best ones on my list. Then we have Aura Clash. Aura Clash, the problem is that it attacks at close range, but it has a very powerful attack. And eventually, when you are, playing dungeons and doing open world content, mobs will reach you. They will reach you, they'll be around you, and Aura Clash will be the strongest basic skill to deal with any mobs that are near you. Because it attacks on an arc and it does a lot of damage. So not only that, it can actually stun enemies as well. Every 10th attack, it stuns enemies. So it's actually a very powerful close range basic skill, and together with Firebolt, they are my two preferred basic skills for the Sorcerer. Now let's start with Incinerate. Incinerate does a lot of continuous burning damage, but to do that it has to drain your mana. And all your master skills, they will cost a lot of mana, and if you're going to use Hydra as well, which is a Conjuration skill, that's also more mana spent, and there might not be enough mana left to make good use of Incinerate, at least in the early game. Then we have Fireball, which is great especially at mid and close range, because you can make the most use of the explosion damage and kill multiple targets. At long range, then it depends. You must have a good aim and make sure you hit at the right spot to explode multiple enemies. But a very good skill nonetheless. Then we have Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb, it's goodish. I'm kind of like it. It does a lot of damage as it travels through the mobs, and it travels at mid speed, so it can deliver more damage, but it explodes at the end of its range and not on impact, so it's not always as efficient as it could have been. And then we have Ice Shards. Ice Shards, if you get enemies in line, then it destroys them. It's very good, but it needs to attack in line. So it's not something that is always gonna happen. Sometimes we'll just be surrounded by enemies, but it's still very powerful. Chain Lightning is my preferred core skill because you only need to hit one target and then it does the rest, 6 all the other targets, and it's a just very good skill. If there's only one target, then it takes all the damage from the Chain Lightning, and it's also a good finisher. After you use your Conjuration skills and your mastery skills and the enemies are almost dying, you can finish them off with Chain Lightning because you only need to hit one, and then Chain Lightning will seek the other targets. So it's a very powerful finisher, and I really like it in my builds. And then we have Charged Bolts. Charged Bolts, I really don't like it because you fire 3 bolts of electricity, they travel slowly at mid-range and with a wide angle, so they are not always the attacks are not always very efficient. You do not hit many targets. Sometimes you hit only one or two. So I really think that it's a very, very weak skill, especially compared with the other core skills. Maybe if it had more charges, if it had more range, if it was faster, I don't know. But the way it is designed, it's something that I really don't see myself using.
I'm low on precious metals.
Sorcerer has great defensive skills. Flame Shield is going to make you immune, does damage to enemies, and if you enhance it, it increases your movement speed as well as give you mana cost reduction. Then you have Ice Armor that creates a barrier for 6 seconds, and it's really great to defend you. And then you have Frost Nova, which just freezes the enemies so you can get out of danger. And you can also always use Teleport to just teleport your way out of there, as well as move faster across the map. So Hydras are just great. You put 3 heads of Hydras on the battlefield, they last there for a long time, they do a lot of damage per hit, they attack at long range, they do burning damage, and they do not have a health bar, so enemies cannot destroy them. They're just overall great. You can enhance them to get a 4th head and get a legendary aspect to summon multiple groups of Hydras. Then you have Ice Blades, which is just very unimpressive. One of the weakest sorcerer skills. I really don't like it. It lasts for a very short time, and it moves slowly towards the target. And once it reaches the target, it only has time to attack once or twice, and then it disappears. So it feels like poorly designed. Maybe it needs a buff, or maybe it's something that will get better in the end game. I don't know. But right now, at this stage of the game, it feels really weak and unimpressive. You cannot compare it with Hydra. You cannot compare it with basic skills. Basic skills are better than Ice Blades. Okay, so between those two, always Hydra, always Hydra, Hail, Hydra. It's always going to be in my builds. Then you have Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear, the problem with Lightning Spear, it does a lot of damage overall, but it's divided between all those targets on the battlefield because it does 1 hit per target, then it seeks a new target and it does a small damage per hit. It does about half the damage per hit as each head of Hydra and about half damage per hit as the Chain Lightning. Blizzard is a great skill, well designed. I like everything about it. I like the way it looks. I like the way it sounds. I like the way it's animated. I like the cost of it. I think it's just right. 40 mana. You start with 100 mana, but you regenerate 10 mana per second. So by the time you have used 2 blizzards, you probably have the mana for a third. I like the area that it affects. I like the damage it does. I like everything about it. I think the duration is just right. It feels like a very well designed skill. I like also that it falls exactly where you point it on the map, centered around the mouse cursor. And I know it feels silly to say that, but Rain of Arrows from the Rogue is a good example of a skill that really disappointed me because it doesn't work that way. But I'm gonna talk about that in detail in my video about all the rogue skills, and then later there will be a video about all the barbarian skills because I have played the 3 classes all the way to level 25. I even made a 4th character to play on hardcore. Now let's talk about the meteor. The problem that I have with meteor is the animation and the casting time, because first you mark the ground where it's gonna fall, and then it takes a while, and then it falls. It's not a long while, but that little delay could be the difference between hitting or missing a creature, especially because you could be moving around the map and creatures will follow you. and because of that, a few could leave the area, and you meteor would just miss them. And not only that, it just feels boring to wait for it to fall. Now, Firewall, I really like it. Instant cast, covers a large area. It has a good duration, does a good amount of damage, and it's cheap to use, so you can cast multiple firewalls. Small in small areas, you can actually burn the whole ground. I like to use it together with Hydra, so Hydra attacks from a distance. Hydra is another fire-based skill that takes a long time on the battlefield. So you put Hydras with Firewall, and then you finish off enemies with Chain Lightning. It's something that I really enjoy doing. So the only problem that I have with Firewall is that I couldn't figure out how to control the direction. If I wanted to make it vertically or diagonally or horizontally, I couldn't figure out if there was a way to control that or if it was always at random. Then we have ball lightning, and ball lightning, I don't really like it. I mean, I can see it being very powerful if you are in a area with crowded enemies. If they are all together, then you can you can cast a ball lightning, and it's going to travel slowly through that crowd, doing multiple damage to each target. But that is very situational. Sometimes mobs will be dispersed, or there will be only a few in the battlefield. Now, Deep Freeze is really cool because at the same time that you freeze all the enemies around you, you do damage. It's not a lot of damage, but it's a decent amount of damage. And the fact that you're doing that damage while they are frozen is great. Another great skill, ultimate skill, is Inferno, which is just a big uh, AoE fire based giant snake just melting down enemies around you. So, also a very powerful ultimate skill, but my preferred one is Unstable Currents because every time you cast a lightning based skill, it will cast another random non-basic skill. So you can just spam Arc Clash, which is a free skill, and you get a lot of those other much powerful skills for free. It's really powerful.